what I'd like to do is show you how to access data from the World Bank, in particular the World Bank indicators that we'll use for our project, and how to then get those data ready for bringing into Stata for analysis. What I've already done here is, as you can see, is opened up the World Bank indicator website, and as we scroll down you'll notice then that the different indicators that are listed are organized by topical areas, where each of those topical areas is also listed over here to the right hand side of the screen under that list. Let's just go down under climate change, for instance, and you'll notice that there are several different indicators. The first is access to electricity. We also have under this topic CO2 emissions in metric tons per capita, and also we have forest area in square kilometers. You notice every time you highlight one of those labels for an indicator, it turns blue, so we can then click on it to access that information, which I've just done for that first item, access to electricity. And you'll notice that as it comes up, the first thing that we see off of the right hand side are graph opportunities that we can open up to look at the data. Now, it just so happens for this particular indicator, the data are not collected every year by the World Bank, but as we move down the screen a little bit, you'll notice that it reports information here from 1990 to 2012, but there are only a few data points, so it looks like the World Bank only collects this information once in a while. Here there are 4 years of data. And what we can do here also, though, is look at the data that are plotted. In this case, it's going to plot 2012 data by a map, and there's a bar chart you can also open up as well. So let's go back to the line option, which is what the standard is. Now, as we scroll down, you'll notice then here the actual data points that are available for each country for 1990 and 2012. And 1990 is highlighted as the first in the data series. We could click and drag this if we wanted to shorten that time series. And 2012 is the last data point in the time series. And let's say we want data for 2010. Well, if we just click and drag then that button down a little bit to the over to the left, we'll notice then if we move it to 2010, the 2010 data do actually show. So that's how you can change the display of the information as well as the range of data points that are shown in the line graph here. But I find it really tedious to download information from this part of the screen. Here we could access one variable at a time, and that becomes really rather tedious to work with, as I mentioned. Well, what I can do, and I notice I can have the same options up here towards the upper right hand corner on the screen that comes up for each indicator, or if I go back to the list of all indicators for now what I've done is I've changed the data points, so if I keep on scrolling back till I get the original World Bank indicator home page, which we're almost there. One more, I think, and we'll get back there, or 2 more clicks. But you notice that anytime we access the World Bank indicators on this particular page, the first one, or each individual page for each indicator, we still have the list of options up here to the upper right hand corner of the screen that we can access information from. What I'll do is move the cursor up to Data Catalog, and you notice then it's an active link. So I'm going to, with the cursor on top of Data Catalog, click on the left mouse button, and that will jump us to that page. And what's listed here are the actual different data sets that they have available. We're going to just simply use the very first data set, that being the World Development Indicators. So I'm going to click on that, and what I'm looking for here, you notice it describes the data set a little bit: time series, annual, national and region, up to 217 countries or economies, I believe, and some other information. Describes here the information that's included, updated quarterly, so we can scroll down and look at that information. What I will do, though, is download the entire World Development Indicators data set, and if I move down under download options, I see WDI for World Development Indicators in Excel. So I want to open this as an Excel file, the Excel data here. It's going to download a zip file that takes up 95 megabytes of space. So move the cursor on top of that download Excel link, and I'm going to click on the left mouse button, and we'll see here down towards the lower left hand corner of the screen, it's starting to download that zip file. Now it's going to take a few minutes, so we'll pause here for a few moments and then come back once this file has been completely downloaded in zip form. With the left mouse click, see if that will let me access it. And right there we see, I'm just going to highlight the actual file that's contained. You see it's an Excel file, and I will extract it. It's just going to extract it to the downloads. Directory, a subdirectory. And so it should be there. I'll close this up, and let's go ahead now and open up then this Excel file. It's under downloads where I saved it, and right there we see the Excel file. So I've just clicked it to open it up, and we'll take a look at what it contains and how it's laid out. And now we see the Excel files opened, has the name WDI underscore Excel. Down the bottom you notice there are several sheets here. The first sheet that comes up is the data sheet, and if we scroll across you notice that at first we have the information about country, and then in the next two columns we have indicator names and codes, and then we see the actual data reported by year all the way through to 2016, which is the most recent value or year included in this particular file. If we scroll down, it starts off with the, and here I'll just highlight that to take up the entire screen so I can scroll down more easily. It's organized alphabetically by country or grouping, and you notice all the variable names there are listed. And so it, first of all, for the entire Arab world, it goes through and shows all the individual indicators by year. And yes, there's quite a lot of data here that we've got. And then it also, after it gets through, it now also aggregates it by the Caribbean small states. So as you scroll down, you notice that at first, the first bits of information are groupings or aggregates we see across countries. And it's not until we get down a little bit further that we'll notice that after Pacific Island small states, Sub-Saharan Africa, now we start to see after world information, there's Sub-Saharan Africa, and then it shows you the same information, variable information for the world. So across all the entire world, it's accumulated all this information. And you notice each line is a separate variable. And then we come down, now we see Afghanistan. All the information for Afghanistan, variable at a time. And then eventually, once we get past Afghanistan, now we see Albania. So it's broken down by country then. But let's go up to the very top where we're at. We also then see other information that's reported here, as well as footnotes that provide information that we've got. But it would be really tedious and overwhelming to work with and bring this entire data set with us into Excel. So what I'm going to do here is, let's go ahead and open up another Excel file, and I never try to touch the original information that's stored here in your original data source. In this case, what we get directly from the World Bank. So in case I make a mistake with the data, it still is in its original form, the original file. I'm going to highlight all the information here. So by clicking and dragging across the row headings, those designation with alphabets, and highlighting everything, I'm now going to copy that information, and let's go over to the new file just opened up and paste. Takes a few moments since it's the entire set of data that we've got that's coming up. machine I'm recording this on, so it takes a little while longer than what I hope would on your machines. As we scroll across, we'll see the entire set of data, or here that we're in the original World Bank file. What I want to do is just reduce the information in terms of the years. So I'm highlighting the years. I just want information from 2010. So since I only want 1 year of information, let's reduce the size of our file. Go ahead, highlight the data that I don't want, and I'll just, with your cursor up towards the top, click the delete, hit the delete button, and you'll notice then that information should eventually disappear. Somehow made the screen a little smaller than I meant to. Actually, it deleted more information than what I wanted to. So let me undo that. Don't know what quite happened there. So what I have here is information. Up through 2008. If I go ahead and hit the delete key, it should delete just those columns only. For some reason it's not cooperating. Why is that? Delete columns. There, deleted those columns. Let's highlight the next several columns I want to delete. I'll go up through and including 2009. There's some highlighting the years that I don't want. Under Home, and click on Delete. It should delete those columns. As we'll notice here now, this still has 2010 and on, so I will highlight, click and drag on the column labels, and I'm going to now delete the final years that I've got. So all I want is just the column of information for 2010, which is what I have right here. Now, the problem we run into, let's go ahead and size this so we can see more of the information that's reported all at one time. There, now that's the column of information. Country name, a 3-letter country code, indicator name, an indicator code, and also then the year. Now, what I'm going to do now is to click and drag to highlight all this information, and now I want to sort the information, and I'm going to sort it by indicator label or indicator name. My data has headers. So the very first row indicates what information is in the column below it. And now I want to sort by indicator name. And as we scroll down now, it provides the information for the very first indicator, the purchasing power parity information for 2005. For the regions, and then by the individual countries after that. And that's what we want. Now, if we go back to the variable labels that are used in the World Bank data, access to electricity, percent of population. So I copy down exactly what that label is in terms of all characters in the label. Copy, and now what I want to do is to go to Home, and come down to Find, and I'm going to put in that label I just copied from the other spreadsheet, and that's the actual indicator I want to use. So I'm going to click Find, and automatically it comes down to the first instance where that information is stored. And since I have sorted all this information by indicator name. Now it has all the information for that indicator all contained together. So I'm going to click and drag and highlight just that information for that indicator name. Whoops, I went past it. Come down to the very bottom, and I think Zimbabwe is the last country. There it is, alphabetically. I'm going to right mouse click. Oh, let me first of all create a new sheet. I'm going to take this information here and copy to a new reduced file. Click, right mouse click, copy, come over to sheet 2, and now I'm going to type in, just hit paste, and there's that information. Let's do the same thing now for the next variable I want to access information from, CO2 emissions. So I'll highlight this label, which is exactly the variable label that is recorded by the World Bank into the data set. Let's go ahead and unclick or unselect that range before I do the second search. Find. If I did not unclick that area for the first search, it would just look for this label in only that area, and that area only contained information to access to electricity. Instead, I want to search for the entire data set and find on this file the first instance of CO2 emissions variable. Find next. I'm going to take a moment to scroll down, and right there it is, CO2 emissions metric tons per capita. I'm going to click and drag all that information for that variable all the way down. And right there, got the end of that variable. Move the cursor up to the selected area, right mouse button, copy, and now I'm going to go over and I'm going to click on the cell off to the right from where the data already are from the last variable and do a paste. Now if you're since we're copying information from the exact same data set that's already been sorted appropriately, we should not have any problem. Arrowed world does match up with arrowed world. So this is the first variable, here's the second, and of course the name designation should be the same across all of this. We want, of course, as we scroll down here a little bit, you want the information for Bhutan for the first variable to match up with the same information for Bhutan on the second variable. And one way you can make sure that this actually has happened is if we go up to, let's say, the first value here, I can use an if statement. Equal to start a formula in Excel. I'll type in if, and there it shows how it is, what the command is. Left parentheses, and I will put in the first name designated for the first set of data, A1. I want the information in A1 to match up the name for the next variable, G1, comma. Now if it does match up properly, so Arab world matches up with Arab world in the same row, I just want to put a value of 0, comma. If it's false, it doesn't match up, put a value of 1. And now let's go ahead and right paren to close it. Now you notice it's a 0 because Arab world equals Arab world, 0 is reported. If it did not match up those two cells, then what it would do is report a value of 1. I'm going to now click and drag to copy that formula down to all of the lines in the data here. And what I notice is I scroll up and looking for any ones. Any ones indicate that the data do not match up for the same country across both variables. No, it looks okay for me. Now let's show you what would happen if it didn't match up. Let's say that I have an extra line space here above these top of these columns, and let's go ahead and try to go ahead and match. See if the information in the row matches. If information in A1 equals the information in G1, comma, put a 0. If not, comma, put a 1. Right parentheses. Now you notice a 1 is displayed here. So as we scroll down here, we'll notice then a 1 is displayed for all of these rows because I've made it so that, notice Zimbabwe for the second variable is one row below Zimbabwe for the first variable. Zambia information for CO2 emissions is one row below Zambia for access to electricity. So they don't match up at all. So it indicates that there's a problem there. Let's say the problem is not quite so obvious as that. So let's go ahead and delete this information, that first empty cell. So now the information should match across the row. But let's say down here we notice then this is the Italian island of Fragile, well known for their gelato. So if you ever get a chance to find in a store Italian ice from Fragile, it's some of the best Italian ice you'll ever have. Fragile. Okay, now I notice I've set it so that for the first rows the information does match across the designation. Afterwards it does not. So if we put in equal, if, left parenthesis, information or the name in A1 equals the name in G1, comma, put a 0, if not, comma, place a 1, and right parentheses. So you notice then the zeros all match up, but then it gets down to where there is something that does not match up and we start to see the ones. So that's just a little trick in Stata if you're pulling data from different sources together, that you can make sure that as long as you have the exact same labels, that you can make sure then that your information is properly being copied over. So I'm going to delete this extra space here. And since I saw that the very first row, the first set of data does match up with the second set of data, let's go ahead and delete everything. Well, I'm going to add in, first of all, before I do that, I'm going to add in a column, row rather, above information above each column. And I'm going to actually take the variable label here, copy, and I'm going to put it on top of the column that contains that information and paste. Now do that also for the next variable, copy, paste. Now I don't need this first column that has column C that has all the information for the variables themselves, nor do I need the internal name that World Bank assigns to that indicator. So highlight and I'll delete those columns. Let's go ahead and do the same thing, not only for that information we have for the second variable, but also the extra gap as well as the labels. I don't need the labels of the country names either, because I know that they match up and it's provided in the very first column. So now I've reduced that information considerably. Let's do the same thing now for the last variable I have in this area, forest area square mile. Highlight and copy in the Word document where I have them listed out. Come over to the original file. Again, unselect that range. Oops, I don't want the original file. I want back the file I was working in that I copied it initially. Unselect that range. Go ahead under Home and find command. And now I want to paste in the variable label, the next one. Click Find, and it's going to scroll through until it finds the first incidence of that variable label, which is right there, forest area square mile. I will click and drag all the way down. And once I've got that whole range selected, going down to Zimbabwe, right there, right mouse button to copy, come back over to sheet 2, and I'm going to, in that very first row, put paste. Now you notice I've got a problem right away. For the first columns, it's the first row rather, for the first set of data, the variable labels are put in the very first row. Here I've not done that, so let me go ahead and insert a space. I'll just do it right mouse button to insert, move everything down one space. And let me go ahead just to make sure that the data match up properly. Equal if left parentheses Arab world equals Arab world, those names match up, comma, put a 0, if not, comma, put a 1. And this has helped me at times when I have accidentally not grabbed all the information that I wanted to grab. But here it looks like it is just fine, nothing but zeros, which indicates the country names do match up appropriately. Go ahead and delete. We don't need that. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Highlight the first instance of the variable label, copy, and put it as the top of the column. Put paste. And now let's go ahead and delete all the information except for the column of information now. And there, those are the variables to keep. Now, one of the things that we'll notice here is if we want information by country, you notice the very first sets of designation, and I'll make this a little wider so we can see it, are actually groupings of countries. The Arab world information, information for all the Caribbean small states, again, Fragile, that important region of Italy that has the best Italian ice. And this is useful for people who do general comparisons across areas, but that's not what we're interested in. We want information by country. And you notice not until we get down to row 49 do we see the first individual country listed. So I'm going to highlight all the aggregate information. I don't want this information by region, I just want instead by country. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit delete. Oops, I meant to delete not just the contents but the actual row. And so left mouse button and then delete. And now it's all the information for 200 and some odd countries that the World Bank has information for, 217 we notice here. Now in some cases you'll notice that there are blanks here, and what those blanks actually are missing data. World Bank doesn't have information for square miles of forest area for Curacao. It does have information in terms of percent access to electricity. It does not have information in column D for CO2 emissions per capita. So that's just a blank space, and that's perfectly fine. When we bring that into Stata, the blank spaces automatically, periods are put in indicating missed data, which is what we wanted to designate as. So now I would save this information, save this file, and what we have then very easily is the data that we'll bring into Stata that come from this particular source. So if I'm done with this information that I have there in sheet 1, that's the entire set of data, I can remove the entire that entire sheet. So all I have here now is information, that the 3 variables that I want, and also country information. Now the 3-letter country name is not necessary either. I'll go ahead and delete that as well. In some cases you may want that, but we're not going to use that here. Now I'm going to add one more sheet here, and this is information where I can a sheet where I can keep all the data information I have here in the data set. So what I'll do next is actually I'm going to insert a row above the very first set of data. Now if you recall, what's above that is actually the variable information, the variable labels rather, that are provided by the World Bank. And I'm going to start to put that information in here. So in column C is going to be CO2 emissions, and the last column is going to have information on the amount of forest area. And I can provide even more detailed information. Since I only have information from 2010, I can go in here and put 2010. So that way I know exactly what information is in each of those columns. So if you're only using certain years, I think it's best to then put the year into that particular label. Now, what we'll do is when we bring this into Stata, you don't want to have a variable name that has special characters and such a long number of characters. I try to keep my the actual variable names that we use, that we actually reference in Stata commands, to 8 characters or less. So let's call this first one electric, or elect. I'll put electric there. The next one, I'll make it CO2. That's pretty easy to indicate what that is. And the last one is going to be forest. I could call it an area if I wanted, or for area, whatever. And let's also give a name to the very first variable, country. And I'll make that World Bank country name. There, how's that? So I'll copy that as well. That's going to be the first one there. And we see what are the variable names. Country. This was electric. This was CO2, if I recall properly. And this was forest. So that's variable name in the very first column. Variable label. Now if it happened to be information that was categorical, I would have another bit of information, another category that I would include value labels, but these are all quantitative, or the name of the variable. And also, lastly, what I'm going to do here is have a source